Ladies and gentlemen, it's KB here again, aka Ryan. So we did step 1, we did step 2. So today is going to be step 3. If you give me a second here. Okay, so step 1 is admitted we were powerless over drugs or alcohol in our lives have become unmanageable. What is powerlessness? It's just losing complete control over something. Quick review. What makes us an addict or alcoholic is our reaction to drugs or alcohol. It is not the amount we used, the amount of money we used on it. It is our reaction to drugs and alcohol that differentiates us from a normal social drug user or drinker. So when we put one in us, our reaction physically is different than others. So when we see someone taking a drink or using a drug or smoking a joint or whatever, when we see people doing that with no consequence, we're like, why can't we do that? So we obsess over that, and we think one day we can gain control, but we truly never do. So, that's what takes place in us physically. That's called the phenomenon of craving. When we put one in us, we begin to crave more and more and more, and something usually has to stop us, an outside force, whether it be jail, rehab, death for some of us. And usually it's a divine intervention. I would say always, because I believe in God, and that it's always a divine intervention. He does something for us that we could not do for ourselves. Okay, and unmanageability, what are those signs? What do those look like? What does unmanageability look like in our lives? It could be something as simple as I'm late every day to work. I'm missing days because of my addiction or my alcoholism. I'm dead. I died because of my addiction. I overdosed. I just simply can't run my own life, so I need help. So, which brings us to step 2. Quick review on step 2. Came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. We had to have something happen in our life usually, that experience that took place that made us believe, or at least have faith, that something had to restore us, and it couldn't be us. It couldn't be another human. It couldn't be our family members. It couldn't be a sponsor. It couldn't be simply just going to a meeting or simply going to church or simply getting into a relationship with a normal, healthy person. They couldn't save us. So something had to bring us to that realization that we had to be restored by a supernatural power, and it's God. And that's what has the power to restore this back to a soundness of mind. That's what sanity means, soundness of mind. Okay, so those first 2 steps are just decisions of your heart. Hey, I'm powerless. My life is unmanageable if I pick up a drug or a drink. And step 2, I need help. I do now recognize, I do know that now I have to seek power. I have to seek help through something greater than me, God. Which brings us today to the topic of step 3. Made a decision. This is our first action step. We're making a decision. And this happens daily. Made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him. As we understood Him. Meaning, wherever we're at with our relationship with God. Maybe we don't know God that well. Maybe we do, and we turned our back on Him and we feel shameful. We don't feel worthy. Whatever that looks like, He's going to meet you where you are as you understand Him. Okay? Made a decision. First step towards action. To turn our will. You might say, what is my will? I've struggled with this a lot. What's God's will for my life? Okay, well, it was simply put to me early on that our will is our thinking. Okay, and that's where our disease starts, is in our thinking. It starts with a thought. So, made a decision to turn our will, our thinking, and our lives. What are our lives? How can you best describe our lives or our life? It would be our actions. So we're going to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. Our will being our thinking, our lives being our actions. So The best way that was described to me when thinking about God's will for your life would be to start with maybe what it's not. I think it's a lot easier, at least for me and some others I've talked to start with a list of things that God wouldn't want for us. He definitely doesn't want us putting a drug or a drink in us, and a number of other things. He doesn't want us lying. He doesn't want us stealing. He wants us to love our neighbor. All these things. It's easy to make a list of the things that God does not want for us. So start there. That's your thinking. So when a thought pops into your mind, excuse me, God probably doesn't approve of me smoking, but I still have this habit. So when that first thought pops into your mind, of anything, of something you might begin to do, or a habit, usually there's a thought alongside of it that's like, that's not good for you. And so that's God's will, And as you read more of the literature, 12-step literature, and you get into the Bible and you begin to pray, what happens? What happens? We begin to know God. We begin to know God's thoughts for our lives. So we can kind of separate those, the thoughts of the enemy that's trying to kill us, and the thoughts of God who's trying to give us prosperity, who's trying to give us blessings, who's trying to get us to fulfill his purpose. And it's definitely not to get high or drunk. So as you learn God's thoughts for your life, they're going to be right here, and also here. But it's going to start here. You're going to think of a thought. You don't have to act on it. Remember that we're going to have those sinful thoughts. We're going to have those thoughts of using or drinking. But once we put it into action, then it becomes a problem. So, they have a saying that says, this too shall pass. So anytime you're feeling some kind of way, or you're having a thought of using or drinking, it can stop there if you learn God's thoughts for your life. And so that's, again, where the disease starts. So you can begin to separate those two. And the more you learn God is the more you can begin to differentiate the two. Like, okay, those are my flesh. That's my flesh talking. That's the enemy talking. He wants to kill me. My flesh wants to kill me. It wants to fulfill those desires I have to do bad things. And then there's these other thoughts that is of God. And so you'll begin to learn those. And it truly takes place when you begin to get closer to God and have that personal relationship, which is what the 12 steps are all about. Okay, so how do I do that? How do I turn my will and my life over to God? Well, the book has a couple suggestions, and the Bible has a lot, as well. And so, one thing it suggests is that when I wake up, I ask God to direct my steps. I ask him to keep me sober today. And I ask him, how can I be of use to the person next to me? How can I be of use to fellow man? And can I do your bidding all day? Bidding mean, can I do your work all day? Can I work for you, Lord? Can I work for you, God? What can I do for you today? Guide my steps. Help me determine what thoughts are of the enemy and what thoughts are of you, God, and just walk with me. Okay, that's a good way to start your day. That's a good way to turn it over daily, to make that daily decision and turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Okay, and throughout your day, you can say little breath prayers. You can talk to God all day. You get in an argument with a coworker or someone close to you. It's very easy to hit that button and blow up, and that could lead to death for us. That could lead to a relapse. And so you can take that moment to kind of say, God, I'm feeling some kind of way. Just take it away from me. Take this emotion away from me. I don't have to own it. Okay? I don't have to turn it into an action. And, in the evening, it suggests in the book that we review our day. It also suggests in the Bible that we meditate on his word day and night. Why? Well, because it fills this up with the good stuff as opposed to the bad stuff. Our flesh, our own thoughts. Because remember, we're born into sin, so it's very natural for us to give into these desires. And so At night it suggests in step 11, and it's never too early to start a step 11. I know you would say, hey, Ryan, why are you telling me to do the steps out of order? Well, because there's some value in there. There's some therapeutic value in step 11's nightly inventory. And that's when you take a look at, was I afraid of anything today? Do I owe an apology? Was there anything I could have done better? Could I have packed this into the stream of life a little differently? Could I have added to this world instead of take out of this world? It's kind of selfish for us to go throughout life wondering or thinking or expecting to snatch things out of this world. Why don't we